was everything. In fact, I realize now that it was the prestigious place to work back in those days. I look back and see it and talk to people who weren't with the railroad. And if you were with the railroad, you got credit like that, you know?
That was a better job, the railroad. And the railroad was the best job in Mississippi, Trixie and Jackson, New Orleans. You said the railroad, it was a good job in New Orleans or wherever. The railroad it just was a good job. Anybody get on the railroad, they call them, they kind of upstairs there. And we lived good when we got on the railroad. That's right.
When I hired him for the railroad, it was a struggle. I mean, you can think the minimum wage was 50 cents an hour. And $2.04 an hour was a big wage for me when I started that. And I thought I'd have more money than I could ever spend in my lifetime, But everybody had come out of that era where 50 cents an hour was probably the top, and they got to work for the railroad, and we appreciate it.
I was then born in Walthall County, January 15th, 1917. I moved back to McComb, I think, in 1929, just before the Depression. When I grew up, got educated, and went to school, and married, and my wife's stepdaddy worked for the railroad. And you had to maybe get somebody to vouch for you to be able to get a job. Some of the merchants or something like that. I was able to get a job for the railroad as a railroad employee. Started working in 1942, I think. I don't remember now just what the month was, but it was in 42. Railroad was the backbone of McComb. All the industry, that was the main industry. One thing you learn to work, learn how to work, learn how to follow orders. You were assigned a job to do and then prepare yourself to do whatever the job is. So you need to train your child to work. Let him learn. I learned from childhood how to work.
I grew up around the depot in Summit. My dad was an agent there, and I learned to telegraph right there in that office, and learned so much about the whole operation till I could really do it. When I was just a kid, and I used to copy the cotton C&Ds, they called them, when cotton was the king back in those days in the 30s. There were several mercantile companies in Summit that bought cotton, and they sold it on the market, and I used to copy those C&Ds that would come in every 15 minutes from the cotton exchange in Chicago.
Somehow I got my foot caught between the end of the rail and the cross tie. My partner saw what happened and asked me if I was hurt, and I shook my head, meaning no. But shortly thereafter, I went to a little stream beside the railroad and pulled off my shoe to survey the damage. My foot was blue, and I thought I had really been hurt bad until I put my foot in the water and the blue dye from my socks washed away. I put my sock and shoe back on and went back to work.
I got connected with the railroad my seniority day, August the 4th, 1969. That was in the car department, working under Mr. Etheridge, superintendent, and Mr. Memphis Smith, assistant superintendent. Mr. Reagan was my foreman in the shop to start off with, and then later on, Matthew Noble was my foreman before I left out of there. He and I left out at the same time going in transportation. And then Mr. Arcelis Isaac, I worked under him as my foreman. I enjoyed working for the railroad. I was a brakeman, head brakeman a lot. I'd catch flagging jobs sometimes. But I enjoyed my work, got along with everybody. Everybody that I worked under and with, they were mighty good people to work with. From the shop, superintendents, assistant superintendents, to the train masters and to the train crews. I got along with everybody, and I come up when the time was hard.
I brought it into the roundhouse and put it on the turntable and turned it to the stall, the first stall as you come in the roundhouse. And everything was working good when I put it on the turntable. The brakes worked good, but when I put it in the stall, put the brakes on, it wouldn't stop. And so they had a block there to keep you from running off the track, but it knocked the block down. I run into the wall of the roundhouse. And it all come tumbling down. Well, I knew I was going to get fired. I knew my dad was going to really give it to me. But anyway, Mr. Lacey Westbrook and Mr. Butler was roundhouse clerks at that time. And they come running out. And Mr. Westbrook run back in, called the B&B department, the building people that told them to come back. So they put the wall back up before 7 o'clock. And so they didn't mention it to my dad, and I didn't either. So I knew I was going to get fired, but I didn't. Nobody never said anything else about it. That was it.
I had a 3-wheel cart buggy, you know, and I enjoyed that. I had a radio. They would call me and tell me they need to sit your material, go on the call, you know. I enjoyed that cause it was like a motorcycle, you know. It was fast too. I had the whole line. I had 17 cars up and down that line I had to serve. And so they would tell me, and I got to where I would go up and down there, look on the car, see what it needed. Sometimes they would call me, most times they didn't have to call me, I always had to lay it up there.
We were impressed as young people of the people who worked for the railroad. They were looked up to. We had no idea as to really what working on the railroad meant. You'd see the people going down the road with their little lunch pails and coming back home. Some of them walked from Summit all the way to McComb and then walked back. But we knew that it had to do with the economics. Some people had more than other people. And that made a difference. I had an uncle who worked for the railroad. And then I had a neighbor who lived directly in front of me who worked for the railroad. And he was a very kind gentleman. He was a person who shared what he had with the neighbors. And I had a deacon at the church who worked all of his life with the railroad. I had church members who were married to people who, I had a deacon who was a porter on the train. And it was fascinating watching him because he had a special demeanor that was altogether different from the men who worked in the shop, because he had to dress a certain way and he wore a hat, and each time he met people he tipped his hat. I don't know whether you're familiar with the book about the porters and how they were considered upper class people, even over the other people who worked. But this gentleman was such an impressive person, and everybody looked up to him. He passed a couple of years ago, but he was known throughout McComb. Mr. O'Neill, Mr. S. Bernard O'Neill, and his wife is a teacher. And he was just an outstanding person. The dignity, knowing how to open the doors for the
When
ladies.
the steam locomotive came into the what we referred to as a roundhouse, it was stopped short of the roundhouse and it had a cinder pit. And they had the laborers that knocked the fire out of this firebox. But that steam would have, that locomotive would maintain enough of steam to propel itself to the roundhouse. And they would bring that locomotive into the roundhouse and it'd go on the turntable, and then the turntable would turn to which stall they wanted to run the locomotive into. And them boilermakers immediately usually would put a board in that firebox, and they would get in that firebox with a with a light to inspect to see if they had any kind of leak in that. And it was hot, hot. I don't see how they really got in there, but they did. That was a daily routine that they did.
Welcome to the McComb City Railroad Depot Museum. Not many towns owe their very existence to a single industry. But when Colonel Henry Simpson McComb established his railroad repair shops 100 miles north of New Orleans in 1872, a city was born. From its humble beginnings in the 19th century to its eventual closure in 1987, the railroad shops not only served as the regional hub of transportation and commerce for the people of McComb, it brought a better way of life to thousands of its workers and their families as the area's largest employer. Hi, I'm Walt Grayson. And though the repair shops are no longer with us, the railroad's considerable impact is still felt today, as more than a dozen freight and passenger trains make their way north and south through McComb every day, moving people and material along the way to their final destinations. For area residents, as well as McComb natives who now make their homes elsewhere, the cherished memories of the city and the railroad shops live on in this historic and award-winning railroad museum. Established in 2001, it contains over 1,000 artifacts with extensive private collections of railroad memorabilia, historic photographs, equipment, and original documents. It serves as a tangible means of preserving the story of McComb and, in so doing, remembering its proud heritage. The depot building itself, built in 1901, is one of almost 6 buildings in McComb's Depot District that are on the National Register of Historic Places. Typical of the design of early 20th century railroad station, its large doors, ramped entrances, and wide eaves allowed it to serve the dual functions of accommodating a high volume of both freight and passenger traffic. Inside the depot, you can explore the inner workings of the repair shops, which for more than a century maintained a sprawling industrial complex encompassing 64 acres, the primary function of which was to provide maintenance and support for the trains and the rail transportation system for the Illinois Central Railroad's self-proclaimed main line of mid-America, with fabled names like the City of New Orleans and the Panama Limited, rumbling their way through McComb and into the cultural fabric of America. In 2009, the museum was selected to host Journey Stories, a Smithsonian exhibit highlighting the importance of the railroad and the migration of the American people. And staffed by local volunteers, this historic exhibit personalized the experiences of generations of Americans who traveled the rails in pursuit of a better life in an expanding land of greater opportunity. The 6-week event attracted thousands of visitors, and its success garnered the museum the coveted Award of Excellence from the Humanities Council. From these stories, and many others that were contributed during the exhibit, visitors learned about the railroad's influence, in not only fueling the industrial and commercial growth and prosperity of the towns in its path, but in playing an integral role in spreading the cultural influences spawned from the music and stories that rail travel inspired.
Blow, Lord, Lord, hear that whistle when she blow. Oh, she blow like she never blowed before. blow like she never blowed before. Lord, Lord.
Before the development of the interstate highway system, blues, jazz, folk, and country music artists traveled up and down the line, from New Orleans to Chicago, with stops performing all along the way in cities large and small: St. Louis, Memphis, Jackson, McComb, and so many other cities along these very rails, serving as a convenient touring route for professional singers, musicians, and songwriters. Playing at local clubs and venues, these musical artists left a lasting influence on an evolving American popular culture. By some estimates, more than 1,000 different songs with a reference to railroads have been recorded, and in every musical genre. Perhaps no other region in the world and no other industry in the world has had such a profound effect on shaping American music as an art form. The rail system's first locomotives were powered by steam generated from the burning of coal. A massive concrete coal chute to supply fuel was built in McComb in the late 1940s and still stands today just north of the overhead bridge connecting State Street to Pearl River Avenue. Constructed to replace a wooden structure that was destroyed by fire, the remarkably preserved condition of the concrete chute is, in part, attributed to its brief operation, as just as it opened for use, the coal-powered steam engine gave way to the more efficient and durable diesel-powered plant for locomotives, making this structure functionally obsolete. Today, it serves as a uniquely recognizable landmark to greet rail passengers to McComb, and is a lasting reminder of the steam-powered era. The museum's outdoor train display includes steam engine 2542, a 200-ton locomotive with 8 drive wheels, manufactured in the IC's Paducah, Kentucky shops. It is perhaps one of the best examples of the mountain-type steam locomotive known to exist. Visitors can enjoy touring an impressive line of antique rail cars behind the engine, among them an executive office car built in 1883 and used by railroad management as their working office while on the road. Also included in the display is a rare railway post office car, constructed in 1914, and which delivered mail along the local line to small and obscure stations. Only 3 RPO cars, as they were commonly called, are known to still exist. A one-of-a-kind refrigerator car, made of aluminum and manufactured right here in the McComb shops, takes its place in line. And, of course, the familiar red caboose, one of the more recognizable railroad symbols of the bygone era. Always a popular attraction for the thousands of tourists who visit each year, this cupola-style caboose was built in IC's Centralia, Illinois shops in 1966 and was the largest class of caboose manufactured. The wrecker car completes the exhibit with its massive crane capable of lifting 250 tons, used to clear derailments and to place overturned rail cars back on track and back into operation. Located between the depot building and the train display is a walkway containing a brick memorial with names of railroad workers, past and present, etched into bricks, that have been purchased in their honor or memory. Many familiar names can be found among the hundreds of bricks, some containing the years of service of the worker, and perhaps the particular job title proudly listed in tribute to their life's work. The Brick Memorial is not only a popular attraction that provides a funding source for the museum, but is a permanent and symbolic reminder of the bonds shared by those workers and their families over many generations. Throughout its existence, the museum has enjoyed substantial support from the community, as countless volunteers and contributors have donated their time and financial resources to its operation, growth, and expansion. Originally housed in the southernmost end of the depot, the museum expanded in 2014 to occupy all areas of the depot with the exception of the Amtrak passenger waiting room, which still serves as a departure and arrival station for those preferring the more leisurely and relaxing pace of rail travel. Individuals, businesses, civic groups, and the city of McComb have all contributed to providing the museum with the essential equipment and furnishings to the newly expanded depot area. Among the contributors is the local chapter of Rotary International. Founded in 1932 and with almost 100 active members today, the Rotary Club of McComb became a major benefactor in the museum's expansion in 2014 with a financial gift of $40,000, as well as a commitment from its members to continue to support by adopting the Railroad Museum as its long-term service project. This ongoing supportive partnership will ensure that the museum will have ample resources contained in the Rotary Tourism Room, as well as the necessary volunteers to host special museum events and to ensure that visitors will enjoy their museum experience for generations to come. If you'd like to join our organization, please consider becoming a friend of the museum with a $25 annual fee for individuals or $40 per family. Perhaps you'd also like to purchase a brick in honor of or in memory of a relative or friend who worked for the railroad. Information concerning the purchase of a brick can be found during the course of your tour or by accessing the form found on our Facebook page. Once again, we welcome you to the McComb City Railroad Depot Museum. We hope you enjoy your tour and will visit us again.